Miller about asking who moves money around in the. I have two questions. Well, I have one statement. I thought that you people going might independently ask other commissioners how they do it. I didn't realize.
I was asked by the chair of the committee, Representative Fleck, to ask them, to ask the New Hampshire Association of Counties to make this.
And did you ask her to ask the question that was
I asked her
approved to ask it?
Yes, absolutely.
And do the other commissioners agree with that question?
Well, whether they agree with it or not, that's the question I was asked to ask.
Well, that's not agree, but what do they think of the question?
Did I don't know, did I read it? I don't remember whether I read it to the public, but the question that I was asked to ask, and that I wrote to Betsy Miller, was, do you allow transfer of funds between line items within the same account without delegation approval? That was the question. That's the question I gave to Betsy Miller, and that she's going to poll the other 9 counties on.
Being proactive, I asked that question at the last meeting of the New Hampshire Association of Counties on the Board of Directors. Coos County does do that. Anything over $1,000, they need to have delegation approval. Executive committee approval.
Excuse me, David, from account to account or line item?
Line item to line item. Line item to line item.
Okay.
And although they weren't commissioners, they said it's working fine in Coos County. I believe there was another county, but I don't remember who it was, but we'll find out. I'm not sure we're the only county that doesn't do that, but at least Coos County said it works fine for them.
Okay. And the last public input question I have in the minutes, it says, Commissioner Kenny cannot release non-public minutes from January to June because of ongoing issues. Who's kidding whom here? We haven't seen any release of non-public minutes from either 8 months or 10 months. I can't remember whether it was last October or last December. Every single week we are asked to leave here because it's a non-public session. You mean to tell me in 8 months you haven't adjudicated one case? I'm sorry, I don't believe that.
I think we'll have the county attorney in next week to explain the release of non-public. He has a concern about releasing non-public minutes. And we'll hear from him as to what his philosophy is, or what the legality is of releasing minutes.
Okay, good. That should settle.
I was hoping that he would be in today, but we'll have him on the agenda for next week.
And maybe he can bring along with him some evidence that he's gone to some continuing legal education that would enlighten him as to the right-to-know law, because it may only be his limited legal opinion that you're going to hear next week, and not the authoritative voice of what actually should happen. There isn't anything once it's completed that can't be released, and there is a fundamental right to know that's
and that says it in the right to know law.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll hear from him.
Okay.
But you can release it even if it is done, if it will cause damage to the county or to certain people.
I think we'll wait to hear from him. I think when something is settled, the names still appear, and it might be damaging to those people, even though it might be a case of releasing those minutes. We'll hear from him where he's coming from. Okay. Any other public input? Yes, David?
It just struck me about that rule that says you can't move $1,000 between line items. It just seems like if you're not allowed to really manage the county money, then why do we have commissioners?
Well, there's a lot of other functions other than the line items that we act on. I think it tightens up the budget, and it doesn't give much flexibility to, it depends. Now, if we're going to, every time we move money from one line item to another line item, we have to call a delegation meeting. Now, 14 people are going to come, because that's the executive committee of this delegation. It's going to be expensive. They're going to get mileage. It's going to be time. If they can change that to have maybe 3 people, like the chairman, the vice chairman, and the clerk, which are on a committee to hear appeals from anybody who is not satisfied with the grievance procedure that we have, they can go to those 3 people of the delegation for an appeal. Maybe those 3 people should be the ones that would give the okay to change one item to the other. Mr. Babson.
The suggestion was made that we investigate being able to have the delegation acting as the executive committee vote by phone or email in a case where you have to shift $1,000. That was one of the things that was brought up.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, it was also brought up that time could be of an issue here. And that was one of the concerns that Representative Merrill brought up.
Well, yes, that's true, Commissioner Solomon, and somebody did bring it up. But I've been around here a long time, and I don't know how many times we've come into an emergency when you have to know in 12 hours whether you can shift the money.
But that, I don't know that has been an issue in the past. But you have to keep in mind that it could be an issue.
Right.
It could be, but there has to be.
I don't think you can go on just on, it's wonderful to look at the past, absolutely we must. But by the same token, you cannot just close your mind to the fact that something different might happen in the future.
And there's no, I mean, it's wonderful to think that Carroll County is somehow immune from the current national debate. But as I said to Representative Babson, there isn't anyone on the delegation or the commissioner in this room who can predict what fuel costs will be a year from now, or food costs, or electricity costs, or any uncontractual costs that we might have. So you may be putting yourself into a situation where some other agenda, i.e. eliminating the overtime line, or eliminating the nursing home, starts running with a terrorist management of the budget by them saying, no, we're not going to move some money to the fuel line, so you can't pay your fuel bill. Or we're not going to move some money to the food line, so you can't feed your prisoners because we don't think they should eat anything anyway because they broke the law, or whatever. But you're putting the operation of the county budget well into the political arena, and for what purpose? I mean, at any given quarter or any given annual meeting, the delegation has the ultimate authority to set the budget. But to think that they have some sort of God-given ability to predict the cost of everything. What's going to happen when we get another prisoner that has a heart condition, and that all of a sudden the correctional lines go out of whack because we've got all of this additional expense for
It puts them into the management scheme of things versus the commissioners being the manager.
Right. And I think that subverts the...
Unemployment, I figure right now, is over budget.
Mm-hmm.
This hasn't passed yet, but
yeah.
If it does, there's one item right there that we have no control over.
But it's not a crisis. You're talking on one hand, you're talking about a crisis here, and on the other hand, you're talking about going over your line item, and it isn't a crisis. Yes, we're over it. We can come in here at any regular meeting and give you a supplementary budget.
And what's the effective difference then? What is the effective difference of what you want to have happen? It's this psychological or intellectual control, because at some point in time the bill has to get paid.
Yeah.
and whether or not the commissioners elect to pay it, staying within the corpus of the budget, or whether you get to come in and say, go ahead and pay it, what is the operative difference between those two things? The
Unemployment
delegation
insurance
feels
gotta be
as
paid.
though they have to have their thumb on that line item.
I don't think you get resistance to that type of thing. It's the just outright abuse we've seen over the last, my 16 years here, of people in charge here just thumbing their nose at the delegation, thumbing their nose at the public, and doing what they damn right feel like doing. Buying shotguns under the education and conferences for the dispatch center isn't budgeting, Chip, no matter how you do it.
No, it isn't.
But
And I
that
think,
should be
I think
controlled.
if you looked at all of the major infractions of the budget system, you can take 99% of them and put them right on the other end of this building. That is the department that you should be focusing on.
And
And
that's-
somebody's gonna have to wake the sheriff up
Yeah.
to the idea that his expense purview has to be limited to just the law enforcement, and the commissioners have got to get on board to controlling everything else.
the delegation has several opportunities in the past to correct the situation, and they haven't done it.
You're absolutely right.
And it may be a legislative correction. I mean, I think a good question to ask around to the legislators or to the county commissioners would be, how many other sheriff's departments are in this same situation where the commissioners have little or no control over what's going on in there? And if it's a majority of them, I'd say that, that would be an interesting legislative enactment, would be to start putting some heavy-duty controls on how sheriffs run their budgets. Much more important than, whether or not you get to look at the unemployment line at the Registry of Deeds or whatever, or the nursing home.
Okay, any other public input? Yes,
I
Damon?
got two. It seems like some of those controls already exist, but they're not enforced. And the other question I have is on Dorothy's question, or the question that Dorothy was asked to ask. It uses the word account, and I think that's kind of nebulous. What if it were changed to department? It can't be changed, but wouldn't the word department or line item or line item within a department be a little bit more clear? Because some county farm could have an account for lawnmowers.
It wasn't my question.
Oh, I know.
I agree, it should be a line item within department
Right.
to get to the point. That's the issue, I think.
Line item with an account.
Line item within the department, within the,
Account, we were calling it.
yeah.
But people might have different ideas of what an account is. There might be an account within the I don't know, some county's farm that's not the farm overall
That
budget.
would be the line item.
Right.
In our setup.
They all use the same budget format.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's not a different budget format for each county.
So they'll know what you mean when you say account.
They should, yeah.
They should.
You had another one.
No, my other point was, don't we have rules on controlling spending, but they just don't seem to be enforced?
One of the problems that we have with a certain department is that we get it after it's been done. It's not a case of coming forward and saying, we'd like to buy some gloves, or we'd like to, and the gloves may fall under uniforms. Now, who decides what the uniform is?
But there's no uniform allowance. If I ran for sheriff and I decided to buy a Rolls Royce for myself with county money,
You'd have a problem.
I'd assume that somebody would take me to jail. But if I went out and bought, fancy dinners or ties or clothes or whatever, then it just seems to slide. It's just a matter of degree, right? I mean, it's the same thing. It's just a matter of how much.
The way it's been operating in the past is that as long as a department head stays within the bottom line, they can overspend a particular line item. And this is supposed to correct that, so they can't overspend. However, it's not to stop the sheriff, in this particular case with the boots and the gloves, from buying those. If he doesn't go over a line item,